Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio. And now, here's our host, Dr. Vanessa Anceloni.
Welcome, dear listener. This is the first program of 2013, and we are very happy and joyful because it's all about happiness. We are all in search in this famous pursuit of happiness. Who doesn't want to be happy? Everybody does. The problem is how. And are there twisted ways sometimes of getting there? Probably. As Dr. Sonja Lyubomirsky from the University of California, Riverside, there are specific ways in which science has already unveiled that if we do so, we're going to achieve happiness, confirming the Spiritist teachings in many ways and forms. But she has just released the book, The Myths of Happiness. What should make you happy but doesn't? What should make you happy shouldn't make you happy but does? Can you believe it? Science comes to the rescue of humanity, adding to things that we already got to know through the Spiritist teachings, that there are specific ways to readjust our focus, to readjust our mind, our interpretation of ourselves and life to achieve the so-called happiness. It's fascinating. Dr. Lyubomirsky is going to be here with us disclosing the most recent findings in science, telling us the direction. Oh, you may be asking, do we need the validation of science? Well, we need the validation of all different forms of revelation, whether it is proved by science or, the Spiritist revelation. And when they combine, it's just happy time. When we talk about the evolution of ourselves and happiness, there is a beautiful message by Emmanuel. In the book, unfortunately, it's not translated into English yet, but we have translated this message for you, just to open up with a beautiful quote from the book when he says, "Probably you did not expect that the spectacular expressions of life mark the process of human experience on earth. And oftentimes, we highlight the negative between the victories of reasoning and the conquests of feeling. Philosophers lament the distance between science and love. Nevertheless, above the point of view above mentioned, we are forced to consider that the domains of science and love are very different. Where is the electrocardiogram capable of measuring the dedication of parents for their children? Where are the computers that specify the statistics of diseases raised by hatred? Where shall we find the machines that can prevent the impulses of war and delinquency amongst all peoples? In which store shall we find the exhauster of passions, which so often devastates the soul, tilting us to madness or suicide while we are incarnated on the earth? Finally, where shall we find the gears that keep us in balance and serenity in the world, blocking our tears when in vain we should hold in our hands the fainting hands of the loved ones who say their goodbye to us while preceding us in the trip of death? Do not fall in love with progress without love. What should be the use of walking for months and months in a desert filled with gold nuggets without the blessing of the spring, or live in a palace without light? Attend to evolution to perfect your life. but cultivate faith and patience, humility and comprehension, the balm of the spirit, because there is no happiness without love, and there is no love without responsibility out of God's laws. Emmanuel, the great mentor of Chico Xavier, opens up our discussion today about the pathway and the possible myths of happiness. And Allan Kardec himself, in the Spirit's book, in a comment to question and answer 933, which is amazing, he says, people are usually unhappy because of the importance they attach to the things of the world. Well, we have a lot to learn to understand what it really is. For now, we want to remind you that Dr. Sonja Lyubomirsky is going to be with us very soon, talking about the ins and outs of happiness, and especially about her most recent book based on findings of science telling us about possible myths of happiness. Because we, dear listener, at Kardec Radio, want to nourish your soul. We want you to start a new year reading yourself of possible myths so you can embrace happiness once and for all. By the way, Bizarre Online Web Radio, located in Miami, Florida, is retransmitting Kardec Radio's programs live and every day of the week, at least 3 times a day. Plus, they have beautiful programs in Portuguese and in Spanish as well. You only need to go to spiritist.com to get to know about Bizarre Online Web Radio. And also, we want to remind you that Saturday, January the 12th, from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., there will be a seminar, Spiritist seminar in Sacramento, California. The Brazilian Spiritual Healing Group, together with the United States Spiritist Council, are organizing this seminar. It's a whole day seminar from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. at the Clarion Inn and Conference Center. All you need to do is to go to the website of the United States Spiritist Council, spiritist.us, to get to know more about the details, the registration. Don't miss it, because it's a beautiful program that they have put together in combination with the Brazilian spiritual healing, based on the leadership of our friends Tanya Stewart and Greg Stewart. By the way, Greg Stewart is the very voice of many of the messages you have heard at Kardec Radio from the CD Enlightening Messages in Living and Loving, and Not Living and Loving, the visualizations by Divaldo Franco. And you can get it, by the way, at the bookstore of the Spiritist Society of Baltimore. Now, we want to let you know that this year we have new segments coming up. Today, we're going to start a new segment officially with a collaboration of the host, Luis Sergio Moroda from Brazil. He is putting together beautiful short excerpts every week entitled Spiritism and the Gospel. It's a beautiful journey. And his brother, who is a spiritist and also a musician, such a gifted family, he's also contributed with Kardec Radio, as he has been doing throughout the last months of the last year, with spiritist songs to make us rejoice in our hearts. We're going to go through a short break, and when we come back, Dr. Sonja Lyubomirsky with us, talking about the ins and outs of happiness. If you have any question, if you have anything, you can either call us, or you can also write your question or comment at Kardec Radio's chat.
We will return to our program after these messages.
A new masterpiece has just been released by Odyssey of America, Memoirs of a Suicide by Yvonne Pereira, under the guidance of the spirit Leon Dennis. The spirit author, Camilo Castelo Branco, using the pen name Camilo Cândido Botelho, describes to the medium Yvonne A. Pereira his dreadful experience after discarnated by suicide. The book entails invaluable instruction demonstrating the greatness of the divine mercy toward repentant suicides, and providing them with the opportunity to understand the universe and life in its fullest dimension, the beginnings of planet Earth, the evolution of the human being, the immortality of the soul. Christ-conscious morality and other relevant themes are presented for the understanding that no attempt at moral growth will work if we remain imprisoned in self-ignorance. A completing of this work shows that there is a road of reconstruction for those who repent. There is always hope because rehabilitation is possible. Buy your copy today at www.edusayofamerica.com.
Kardec Radio, live every Saturday at 11 a.m.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
The International Spiritist Council is organizing and promoting the 7th World Spiritist Congress, which will be held in Havana, Cuba on March 23rd through the 25th of 2013. The Congress theme will be Charity and Spiritual Education in Building a World of Peace. 150 years of the Gospel according to Spiritism. For more information, please visit www.7cem.org.
And now we return to our program.
So, dear listener, we are here with Sonja Lyubomirsky. She's a professor of psychology at the University of California. Her research on the possibility of permanently increasing happiness has been honored with a Science of Generosity grant, a John Templeton Foundation grant, a Templeton Positive Psychology Prize, and a $1 million grant from the National Institute of Mental Health. Lyubomirsky's 2008 book, The How of Happiness, has been translated into 19 languages. She lives in Santa Monica, California with her family, and just now she's going to be releasing her latest title, The Myths of Happiness. Thank you so much, Sonja, for being with us today at Kardec Radio.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
It's fascinating because we're just starting a new year and people have new resolutions and everybody's looking for happiness in this new year. In your first book, you talked much about the how of happiness. What can you tell the listener about what is the pathway to happiness?
Well, that's a big question. Thank you. There's lots of, my first book, The How of Happiness, talks about 12 different strategies that people can use to become happier, and you have to sort of choose what's right for you. So research shows that, for example, expressing gratitude makes people happier, being optimistic, investing in your relationships, exercising, being more forgiving, being more sort of living more in the moment, focusing on goals. So these are all kind of broad categories of activities or strategies that people can engage in if they want to pursue happiness.
And it's interesting because in this How of Happiness, these different stuff that you identified in the most current research nowadays, one of them really strikes to us because exercising, for example, is something that people can do irrespective of somebody else's will or impediment. But when we talk about relationships, it seems to us that it's the trickiest part. We can consider ourselves as social beings. Science has already revealed it. In the Spiritist science, we understand that there is a law of society, meaning that we're drawn to one another, but it's not that easy. So what would you say that in this step of establishing healthy relationships, how can we actually do that? What does science tell us about that?
Right. You're right. It's very, very difficult, but relationships are so critical to happiness. Lots and lots of research shows that happy people have good relationships. They have fulfilling relationships. They have social support. They have close friendships. And so, how do you improve your relationships? How do you nourish your relationships? I mean, that's a very big question. Lots of researchers address that. In both of my books, The How of Happiness and The Myths of Happiness, I have chapters on relationships because they are so critical. And I talk about, I talk about sort of different strategies that people can use about how you can, for example, some simple things you can do to improve your relationships, like spending time every day expressing gratitude to your partner or doing something nice. In fact, in the Myths of Happiness, I talk about every morning asking yourself, what can I do for 5 minutes today to make my partner's life happier or better? Sort of 5 minutes that you can somehow improve your partner's life or your friend's life or your family member's life. I talk about how to improve when there are problems, because that's even harder. I mean, I'm not a marriage therapist or anything like that, but I can sort of talk about the results of research, sort of general research on relationships.
That's so interesting. So you're talking about practical tools that can be used. But in this new book that is just being released, The Myths of Happiness, so interesting because the subtitle is What Should Make You Happy But Doesn't, and What Shouldn't Make You Happy But Does. And you talk about the critical points in our life and the myths. So can you give us a general idea? Because it seems to us that could we say that happiness is a conditional thing?
Well, you mean, is it conditional on different things? I mean, sure. Although I think one of the myths of happiness is really, I guess, kind of overestimating the conditional nature of happiness. So one of the myths of happiness that I talk about is this idea that, well, I'm not happy now, but I'll be happy when, X, Y, and Z happen. When I get married, when I get that job, that promotion that I wanted, when I make money, when I have a baby, when I move to that city where I always wanted to live. People believe that, once they achieve those goals or those dreams, then they'll be happy. And the problem with that fallacy is that it's not that those things won't make you happy. I mean, they will make you happy undoubtedly, but that happiness is likely not going to last forever. It's going to be fairly short-lived, and then you sort of go back. So after you have that new job, after you move to that new house, you will eventually go back to your previous level of happiness. And so the conclusion really, and it sounds like a cliche, but the conclusion really is that happiness is really not so much conditional on external things, but it's really something that's inside of you. We carry it inside of you. It's more something about how you perceive the world, how you think about yourself, how you think about your situation, that influences your happiness more than sort of what your situation actually is.
And in this world today where we have so much exposure to social networks, for example, Facebook, Twitter, etc., there's so many, hundreds of them out there. And science has already presented to us that sometimes we tend to overestimate other people's happiness, and that makes us sad. Right.
So yeah, because we're constantly exposed. So take Facebook, for example. A lot of what happens on Facebook is what I would say is boasting. It's sort of people talking about the good things that are happening to them. Like, oh, guess what? This happened to me. This happened to me. And people don't tend to kind of talk about how depressed they are in their Facebook, status updates. And so you're right. I mean, we do get often, I think, a false sense that everyone else is doing great. They're really happy and they're really successful. And those kind of social comparisons can be really toxic. And I actually have a section in the Myths of Happiness about social comparisons and how dangerous they are. And people who rely too much on sort of comparing themselves to others and thinking about like, oh, I'm not as happy, I'm not as successful as someone else, are going to be much more unhappy. So we really have to try not to focus on how other people are doing, but instead really focus on our own goals and our own sort of personal internal standards. So that's what's important, not so much how other people are doing, but whether we are achieving our own goals.
Okay, Sonja, we're going to have a short break. When we come back, I want to ask you about a piece on your book when you talk about perfection being overrated. Okay.
Great.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Kardec Radio, live, every Saturday at 11 a.m.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
And Life Goes On, in an inspiring novel by the spirit author André Luiz. This book is a spirit's description of the individual after discarnating, and it shows that the lives of the inhabitants of the beyond are related to their mental state. In a novel with 26 chapters, it tells the story of real characters who, upon discarnating, received the help of spirit friends. These friends encourage them to renew themselves through study and work in order to prepare them to review their lives and understand schemes of the past, thereby enabling them to follow new directives of behavior. This volume teaches us the practice of self-examination in a certainty that, in conformity with the laws of God, life continues full of hope and labor, progress and accomplishment after death. Buy your copy today at www.edisayofamerica.com.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
Spiritism for Everyone, the online study of the Spirit's Book and the Gospel according to Spiritism. Spiritism for Everyone meets every Wednesday evening and Saturday morning using the latest technology in web conferencing. You can join in from any computer in the comfort of your home or office, no matter where you are in the U.S. or the world. Spiritism for Everyone is open, free, and requires no registration. To access the web live meetings, go to www.spiritus.us. Spiritism for Everyone is a program of the United States Spiritist Council.
And now we return to our program.
So we are back with Dr. Lyubomirsky. She's a professor of psychology at the University of California. She has been researching on the possibility of permanently increasing happiness, and she has just released a new title, The Myth of Happiness. Much about what science is unveiling to us, things that probably is supposedly to make us happy, but they don't, and vice versa. So, Sonja, when you talk about the fact that, I will quote from your book on The Myths of Happiness on page 231.
Okay.
Finally, we shouldn't expect perfection, not expect always to be right, and not dwell on self-blame when a choice is not ideal. Even when we really are to blame, worrying about the alternatives that we may have passed up and feeling sorry for ourselves, that what we choose is not all it was cracked up to be, will only make us feel worse. So what can science tell us in that regard? So we shouldn't be worried about, I missed that opportunity, that's why I'm going through this in my life, etc. And people tend to wage and reinforce this type of mental dynamic.
I have a chapter in the Myths of Happiness about regret and sort of what happens when you feel like you have a lot of regrets that you have not achieved the dreams that you wanted to achieve, and
Exactly.
and that makes you very unhappy. And so here's a section where I'm talking about that, perfection is overrated. That no one is going to achieve all of their dreams, and so we have to kind of, go easier on ourselves and not sort of blame ourselves for everything, and in a sense kind of lower our expectations. Now it sounds bad to say that, to sort of lower your expectations, because it's good to have high expectations, because the higher expectations, often the more we will achieve. But that high expectations are really good to have before you're about to do something. But when you're looking back on your life and thinking, I always wanted to be an astronaut, and I'm not, or I wanted to play the violin, or I wanted to live in Italy, and then I did not achieve those things, it doesn't really do us much good to kind of dwell on those failed dreams, on those regrets. And so we have to sort of go easy on ourselves, not blame ourselves, because life is so complicated and there's so many obstacles and there's a lot of luck involved in sort of what we achieve and what we don't achieve, and that we should really focus on the future, and sort of stop harping on the past. I couldn't do this, I didn't achieve this, but think about, okay, what are you going to do tomorrow? What are you going to do next year? And sort of focus on the future, I think, is much more productive.
And that's when you talk about the importance of replaying happy moments and analyzing unhappy ones, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right. So So research shows that when you think about your past, we all have negative things and positive events that have happened to us, that what makes us happiest is to replay the happy moments. So think about the happiest days of your life. Think about a wonderful vacation or your wedding day or maybe a day that you earned some kind of award at work. What makes you happy is to replay those moments, to kind of go over them in your mind as though you were playing back like a videotape, because that really helps you to re-experience the emotions, those positive emotions. But when it comes to negative events, when it comes to adversities and traumas, you don't want to replay those because you don't want to, it does not serve you good, does not serve you well to re-experience those negative emotions. And so what research finds is that it's sort of systematically, step by step, kind of analytically analyzing your negative events is what makes people happier, what helps them kind of get past those kinds of events or traumas or adversities. Because when you break a negative event down into sort of its components, when you sort of analyze it, when you try to determine sort of the causes and the consequences, it actually sort of lightens the load a little bit. It makes you feel better in a sense about that event. And so that's kind of the bottom line, is to analyze negative events in the past and replay positive events in the past.
For example, it reminds me, this new finding that you're just mentioning by science reminds me of the movies played by the Italian Roberto Benigni.
Right.
For example, Life is Beautiful.
Right.
In his approach, he was always like trying to see the brighter side of everything. And in that regard, he really overcame so many obstacles. As you say in another chapter, when you talk about looking to the future, there is no happiness without action. What can you tell us more about this action?
And before I say that, actually, this really touches on an important theme of the book, The Myths of Happiness, which is the importance of attention, sort of what you direct your attention to, what you focus on at any particular moment determines your experience, in a sense, determines your life. And so when you're talking about, focusing on the positives. And as you say, taking action. I mean, there's no happiness without action. That happy people are engaged in goals, projects, activities. They are not sitting still. They're not kind of sitting on the couch doing nothing. They're doing things, and that's one of the keys to happiness. And in my book, The How of Happiness, I had a whole chapter about that as well, about sort of taking action, sort of doing something. So all of us can pick a meaningful goal, something significant, something that we can take baby steps towards, starting, tomorrow. And that just the pursuit of that goal, the striving, is actually just as important as the reaching of the goal. The striving is what really makes us happy. It's kind of like that the pursuit of it is associated with happiness.
All right. So in that case, we are talking about here science freeing us from so many things that block our ways. I'll give an example. In neuroscience, people talked for the longest time about the fact that when we age, we have no possibility of growing new neurons, etc. And then it got to 2002. Dr. Gage actually discovered that it's possible. So old dogs can learn new tricks. So is that the same? Like when you talk about the myths in your book, is that one that really was like striking for you, that science really revealed something that made you feel like, man, this can really free people up from these inner myths that they create for themselves?
The book really talks about two general categories of myths. So there's really two myths, and one is this idea that I mentioned before that, I'll only be happy when, X, Y, or Z happen to me. And then the second part of the second really major part of the book is another myth, kind of the flip side of the first myth, which is that, I'll be forever unhappy if some other things happen to me. So we're kind of terrified of the potential for unhappiness. So if I have to get a divorce, if I end up not finding a partner, if I don't make as much money as I want to be, and when I get old, all of those things we think we're going to be so unhappy if those things happen to us. And those things are very difficult and may make us unhappy, but one of the themes of the book is that people are very resilient, incredibly resilient. So we can endure and get past, many kinds of sort of negative changes in life events. And so I guess that is fairly striking, that people are, I guess people don't realize, how resilient they are, sort of how good they are at looking on the bright side, about how, growing stronger, as a result of adversities. And so we have to really stop. Basically, the message of my book is that, we must stop waiting for happiness, and we must stop being terrified of the potential for unhappiness. And that if we know, what other people are going through, that's going to make us feel, I think, a lot more, make us feel relieved, make us feel more hopeful. Because often I think we feel like we're alone, like, oh my God, this is happening to me, and this is so depressing. And I think the book really, because I talk a lot about research about other people, it sort of highlights, what other people are going through, which I think is always helpful to know when you feel like you're alone.
Exactly. We're going to give a short break. When we come back, the ultimate question about social support and happiness.
Okay.
We will return to our program.
A new masterpiece has just been released by Edisei of America, Memoirs of a Suicide by Yvonne Pereira, under the guidance of the spirit Leon Dennis. The spirit author, Camilo Castelo Branco, using the pen name Camilo Cândido Botelho, describes to the medium Yvonne Pereira his dreadful experience after discarnated by suicide. The book entails invaluable instruction demonstrating the greatness of the divine mercy toward repentant suicides and providing them with the opportunity to understand the universe and life in its fullest dimension, the beginnings of planet Earth, the evolution of the human being, the immortality of the soul. Christ-conscious morality and other relevant themes are presented for the understanding that no attempt at moral growth will work if we remain imprisoned in self-ignorance. A completing of this work shows that there is a road of reconstruction for those who repent. There is always hope because rehabilitation is possible. Buy your copy today at www.ediseiofamerica.com.
Nourish Your Soul with Kardec Radio.
Now in English, the book Action and Reaction by the Spirit Andrea Luiz, psychographed by Chico Xavier. Buy your copy online or via your ebook reader. Go to www.ediceiofamerica.com today. The International Spiritist Council is organizing and promoting the 7th World Spiritist Congress, which will be held in Havana, Cuba on March 23rd through the 25th of 2013. The Congress theme will be Charity and Spiritual Education in Building a World of Peace. 150 years of the Gospel according to Spiritism. For more information, please visit www.7cem.org.
And now we return to our program.
Dear listener, we are here enjoying a beautiful conversation about the book that has just been released, The Myths of Happiness. Dr. Sonja Lyubomirsky, she's a professor of psychology at the University of California and has been leading this beautiful research on the possibility of sustaining happiness. But Sonja, the critical point here is people can, as you were talking just before the break, we were talking about the fact that, people can be very resilient. They can really recreate themselves out of nothing sometimes. But it seems, according to your book and the science that supports it, that social support is essential for people to recover and to get back to track in their march to happiness. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. So social support is so simple, and yet it's so powerful. I talk about an instance in my book about a time when I was very upset about something, and just talking to a friend made my distress go from like a 10 to a 3. And lots and lots of research shows that when we're with loved ones, with people who are close to us, we feel less pain, we feel less anxiety, we feel less depressed. There's one study that showed, one of my favorite studies, that showed that when we're with a friend, we even judge a hill as being less steep than when we're not with a friend, when we're alone. And so really cultivating friendships, relationships with family, relationships with our partners, is so important because there's so many situations in life when things are not going well, when we need that social support, that it's going to be critical. So social support is one of those really important tools that we need to develop kind of in preparation for when we need it.
In the Spiritist movement, we talk much about this humanitarian and medium Chico Xavier that brought a lot of teachings. And one thing he used to say a lot is, if you want to be happy, you need to make people happy. How would science possibly validate it?
There's actually a lot of research that shows that that sort of making other people happy or showing compassion for others, helping others, is one of the most powerful ways to make yourself happy. Of course, we don't usually help others or show generosity, for the purpose of being happy ourselves. We sort of do it for other reasons, but being happy yourself is sort of a fringe benefit. And I've actually done quite a few studies showing this as well. So my students and I just finished a study that we did in Spain where we asked people at a workplace, at a company in Spain, to show generosity to others, and we found that that everyone in the workplace got happier. The givers, the ones who sort of did acts of kindness for their colleagues, the receivers, the ones who received it, but even people who observed it. So basically, when you see generosity taking place around you, you're inspired to also be kind to others, kind of like a paying it forward effect, and it sort of increased the happiness, increased connection, decreased depression, had all kinds of really great outcomes in this place of work. Anyway, that's just one of many, many examples that show that when we're generous, kind, compassionate to others, it makes us happy as well.
That's fascinating. It's really fascinating. Well, we hope that this message, Sonja, really brings a lot of happiness to people themselves, because your message brings a lot of perspective to people. Would you like to share your final comments to our listener?
Sure. Well, again, I think my book, The Myths of Happiness, is really about sort of really telling people that we all have sort of misconceptions of what we think will make us happy and what we think will make us unhappy. And what happens is, and those misconceptions are not harmless, because we may end up making poor decisions, or we may end up feeling depressed or feeling like there's something wrong with us when sort of certain life transitions don't make us as happy, for example, as we think they will. And so in my book, I really try to kind of highlight research showing that, all of us, for example, sometimes feel a letdown after we have kids, after we're married, after we have a job that we thought that we really loved, and so these are sort of very normal reactions. And I think this is really helpful for people to know. And the other thing that I wanted to say is that my book covers 10 different transition points in life, 10 different crisis points. It talks about health, it talks about money, it talks about jobs, it talks about marriage, about kids, about being single, about divorce. And so readers can sort of look at or read whatever parts that they find particularly relevant to their own lives. They don't need to necessarily look at everything because there's sort of 10 different transition points that cover the lifespan. And so I hope that readers will find the book valuable.
Exactly. As Dr. Martin Seligman said about your book, it's the right place to look for science-based advice on how to become happier. Thank you so much, Sonja, for your time and for being with us at Kardec Radio today.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
Dear listener, as you have listened, there is a lot for us to go for happiness. As Dr. Lyubomirsky just said, we should stop waiting for happiness. Be proactive, knowing that we have lots of potential inside of us. We are so resilient at difficult times, and yet social support is the most powerful tool to raise us up back again. And remember, Spiritism says that social support happens in two worlds. It happens from the ones who are incarnated with us and the discarnated ones. At the toughest times, remember, you are never alone. Do never give up on the search, the pursuit of happiness. It's in the Declaration of Independence of the United States of America. It is right there. And Allan Kardec, in the question 614, asking about the laws of God, takes the answer of the spirits when they phrase exactly the bottom line, what Sonja Lyubomirsky was telling us. The law of God, the natural law of life, is the only thing that human beings truly need to be happy. And science, through the efforts of amazing scientists such as Dr. Sonja Lyubomirsky from the University of California, Riverside, they are showing to us, unveiling the natural laws of life, telling us that we need to get to know more about how life works. And science is here to our rescue, unveiling every single facet of how to achieve happiness. And sometimes, as she subtitled her own book, The Myths of Happiness, sometimes what we think shall make us happy, it doesn't. And what instead we think will not make us happy, it does. And bottom line, probably don't know yet how to get there. So that's why we recommend this book, The Myths of Happiness, and the Spirit's book, a beautiful combination to find happiness in your own pursuit of it. Now, we would like to remind you that Saturday, January the 12th, from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. in Sacramento, California, the United States Spiritist Council, together with the Brazilian Spiritual Healing Group, will put together a beautiful seminar at the Clarion Inn and Conference Center. All you need to do is register. Get to know of them at the website spiritist.us, and you get to know more about it. For now, we are going to stream to you the beautiful segments that were prepared by Kardec Radio's team, and we're going to kickstart just after the break. We're going to kickstart with the segment of our friend Luis Sergio Maroda. And before we get there, we're going to read a beautiful message by the Spirit Emmanuel through Chico Xavier that he just released at the chat room of Kardec Radio. Thank you so much, Luis Sergio. When he says, Emmanuel says to us, eternity gives little importance to exterior possessions. Those who exclusively pile up temporary advantages, completely forgotten of their inner life, deserve our mercy. They will leave everything, almost always, at the mercy of irresponsibility. Thank you, Luis Sergio. This is a lot of food for thought. After all, Kardec Radio is here to nourish your soul.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Enjoy this new release. Reborn for Love, of the renowned Brazilian scientist and researcher on reincarnation, Dr. Hernani Andrade. This novel describes one of the most extraordinary and genuine cases of reincarnation ever studied by Dr. Andrade's Brazilian Institute of Psychobiophysics Research in Sao Paulo State. Order your copy now at roundtable.uk at gmail.com or at www.roundtablepublishing-uk.com.
Spiritist Network, your gateway to on-demand Spiritist videos. www.spiritistnetwork.com.
Spread the word. Kardec Radio to learn more about Spiritism.
Want to find a good way to explain life after physical death to kids or teenagers? Check out the book Message from a Teen in the Spirit World by the Spirit Neo Lucio and Psychograph by Chico Xavier. In this book, a teenager named Carlos explains his impressions on the new life in the spirit realm with his discarnate relatives and new friends. Purchase your copy online at www.ssbaltimore.org.
The Spiritist magazine is a trimestral, digital periodical that publishes the latest news on the Spiritist thought and the movement in the USA and worldwide. Subscribe now at www.spiritistmagazine.com.
In the book, A Primer on Being Good by the Spirit May, psychographed by the medium Chico Xavier, explains in simple language appropriate for children two paths in life, the path of good or the path of evil. God has granted us the freedom to choose either one. Purchase your copy online at www.ssbaltimore.org.
Now we return to our program.
This time we are going to continue on our reading of some highlights of the introduction of the Gospel according to Spiritism. And to do so, we are going to listen to a renowned quantum physicist in the contemporary world of quantum physics research, the Austrian researcher Professor Anton Zeilinger. We know that quantum physics is now a well-known science for those who are in the field, but it's well known in terms of its use because when it comes to the foundations, well, things are not that simple.
The interesting message here is that we have quantum physics now around for nearly 100 years, and we are still working at the foundations. And that tells me that when we found it, it will be an absolute revelation. It will be something different from what we have been thinking.
Going through the words of Professor Zeilinger again, he says that when scientists have found the explanations for the quantum phenomena, it will be a great revelation. And if you, listener, allow me to add, after that, there will not be so many explanations and hard discussions, because the variables that are missing now to explain the experiments will have been unveiled. What will happen then? Everyone will gather around the now solid foundations of that science. Well, apart from his moral teachings, which, as we said in our last segment, are the focus of Spiritism, Jesus himself and many of his teachings could be regarded as a great phenomenon in mankind history. His behavior was so perfect. As our neuroscientists might say today, he joined both left and right brain hemispheres. As an example, he used to go up the hill and spend the night there praying alone in a typical Eastern attitude. But as day broke, he would go down that hill, change the world with his own hands, showing the Western attitude as its best. That is perfection, an unintelligible phenomenon in mankind history. He certainly was a master, and as a master he was willing to teach people only what he knew they were somehow able to understand better. Once again, apart from his universal moral teachings, he said that he couldn't say everything to us, because we could not bear in the book of John. Since he did not say everything to us, we can obviously conclude that not everything is written in the scriptures. That is the point Spiritism wants to call our attention to. Some people may say, Spiritism is not in the Bible, but quantum physics and electrical engineering, for example, are not in the Bible either, and there are scientific truths as well. See, my friend, how merciful and tender Jesus has always been. He promised to send us the Spirit of truth to make us understand more clearly and straight things that humanity was far from being able to understand before the Enlightenment, before the encyclopedias and the scientific development we have today. We personally believe that the Lord, in His almighty glory, came to be the spiritual and moral genius of humanity. Why not? We have had so many geniuses in many fields recorded in history that have been called the king of music, the father of medicine, and so on. Why not the king of peace, of love, and of spirituality, which was obviously the focus Jesus bore as a master to us? He many times showed to have the power to deal with so many natural forces in a way we couldn't and still can't figure out. Maybe in a different way, he knew about those physical phenomena. But as we said, he was a master, and the true master never gives his pupils what they can't grasp. It is not unusual for us to run into some passages of the Gospel in which Jesus advised some of the apostles not to tell the others what they had just witnessed, usually a phenomenon, because few of them were psychologically and morally prepared for that. What happens in present days when we are to explain a new phenomenon? Well, we try to make up theories to explain it. Today we have many theories trying to clarify quantum physics, for example. That is exactly what happened to Jesus. So many theories, theologies, came to try to do the job. But the lack of some variables, those variables that Jesus postponed to talk about by saying that he had a lot to tell us but we couldn't bear in the book of John, the lack of those variables gave rise to so many different and even dangerous interpretations of the New Testament that it caused the rising of hundreds of Christian denominations, divisions, and, as a consequence, hard discussions, fights, and even wars. Spiritism, my friend, is that variable. It is what was missing for us to understand the gospel in its deep moral meaning. So, highlighting Allan Kardec's expressions, quote, many points in the gospel, the Bible, and in the writings of the sacred authors are in general unintelligible. Some even appearing nonsensical for lack of the key which would help in understanding their true meaning. This key is to be found in its most complete form within Spiritism, as those who have already made a serious study of it can verify, and as many more in the future will also come to recognize. Unquote. It is clear that Jesus could not have said everything then. That's why he promised to send us the Consoler through the Spirit of Truth to stay with us forever. Spiritism is about spirit and truth. And that reminds us of the passage in which Jesus talks to a Samaritan woman. Let's listen.
Dear Kardec Radio listener, welcome to the segment Spiritism in Your Life. Today, we want to invite you for a reflection about self-esteem. Firstly, what exactly is self-esteem? I could say that self-esteem is a term in psychology to reflect a person's overall evaluation or appraisal of her or his own worth. Self-esteem encompasses beliefs and emotions. Abraham Maslow was an American professor of psychology who states that psychological health is not possible unless the essential core of the person is fundamentally accepted, loved, and respected by others and by her or himself. Nathaniel Branden, in the book How to Raise Your Self-Esteem, showed that self-esteem allows people to face life with more confidence, benevolence, and optimism, and thus easily reach their goals and self-actualize. To develop self-esteem is to widen the capacity to be happy. Self-esteem allows people to be convinced they deserve happiness. Understanding this is fundamental and universally beneficial since the development of positive self-esteem increases the capacity to treat other people with respect, benevolence, and goodwill, thus favoring rich interpersonal relationships and avoiding destructive ones. For Erich Fromm, who was a Jewish German-American social psychologist, psychoanalyst, and humanistic philosopher, love of others and love of ourselves are not alternatives. On the contrary, an attitude of love towards themselves will be found in all those who are capable of loving others. In order to better understand this concept, dear listeners, Jason de Camargo brought to us in the book Education of Sentiments, not yet translated to English, that the best language we can use to expand our self-esteem is the language of love. It is the voice of superior feelings that needs to be heard, appreciated, and developed. Only that has the strength necessary to completely remove the individual from the depths of his own being. The noble sentiments sound like a horn that wakes the soul to continue its evolutionary task. Remember, a loving heart does not get sick. But then you may be asking me, so what should I do to expand my self-esteem? I can answer you in several tips. Number 1, self-knowledge is of great value to our improvement. A serene and honest analysis about ourselves will raise the points that deserve to be modified. Number 2, accept yourself as you are. Each incarnation has a purpose, and it's up to you to find a meaning for it. Do not want to be someone else. Further, appreciate the strengths you have. Number 3, love yourself. Christ himself said that we should love our neighbor as ourselves. God does not choose whom to love. He loves everyone, and you are a divine spark of the Creator. So, love yourself and your neighbor. Number 4, faith is a certainty. It is always on the side of self-confidence. Doubt opens psychic loopholes of uncertainty, and it might collapse your goals of progress. Number 5, everything comes from thoughts. Try to stay on the side of constructive and healthy thoughts, and they will lead to safer heavens. Replace negative thoughts with more positive ones. Number 6, be gentle with yourself. Hang this reminder in your room. Do not be hard on yourself. That weakens you, encourages your guilty, and reduces self-esteem. Number 7, believe you always did the best possible at any time based on the degree of love or fear that you were experiencing. Number 8, cultivate good habits. Get used to having your daily moments of peace. Read the gospel, meditate on its content, say a prayer, and continue with profound optimism in life. Finally, number 9, perseverance. Persevere in the direction of healthy self-esteem, and it will come gradually. The results depend on the efforts of each one. Cultivate good feelings and do not leave them. So, dear listener, following these suggestions, you will see that gradually you will increase your self-esteem, and the signs for that will start to show in your life by increased self-acceptance, confidence, positive attitude, and other values of a healthy and balanced life. And may God help you on your pathway. God bless you.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Would you like to liberate yourself from your life struggles or to find inner balance? The Inner Journey CD has 3 beautiful visualizations that will help you bring harmony to your life. As Joanna DeAngeli tells us to, live in a way that you leave enlightening footprints in your pathway as if they were stars pointing out the pathway to happiness. To find the CD, go to the bookstore on the Spiritist Society of Baltimore webpage, www.ssbaltimore.org. That is www.ssbaltimore.org. and start your inner journey today.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
The International Spiritist Council is organizing and promoting the 7th World Spiritist Congress, which will be held in Havana, Cuba on March 23rd through the 25th of 2013. The Congress theme will be Charity and Spiritual Education in Building a World of Peace. 150 years of the Gospel according to Spiritism. For more information, please visit www.7cem.org.
And now we return to our program.
Hello, dear Kardec Radio listeners, and welcome back to the Spiritist Moment. I am Kirsten DeMello, your host. And we also wanted to wish you a very happy New Year, happy 2013. You know, oftentimes every New Year, people set resolutions. And a lot of times these resolutions consist of self-sacrifice, things that they want to give up, giving up chocolate, or maybe going to the gym more, eating less, really entailing things that force us to sacrifice certain things we would otherwise entertain ourselves with. So we give continuation of studying Part 3 of the Spirit's book, The Law of Reproduction, with this idea of self-sacrifice, and rather the idea that the spirits bring to us, not an idea that is of our own, but of the divine and good spirits. When Kardec in question 698 asked the noble spirits, is voluntary celibacy a state of perfection that is meritorious in God's eyes? And the spirits answer, and we quote, no. And those who live that way out of selfishness displease God and mislead others. Now, some of us may be thinking, Kirsten, this doesn't apply to me. I'm not voluntarily celibate. I'm not celibate at all. This question doesn't apply to me. In actuality, it does. If we go to question 699, which is also related to voluntary celibacy and self-sacrifice, the spirits tell us in the observation, and we quote, every personal sacrifice with a view to doing good and without selfish ulterior motives elevates the individual above his or her material condition. So in that context, every time we choose to do something that is, we have to sacrifice something, a personal sacrifice, with the intent to do good for ourselves and to others, this is meritorious before God. Now, when the spirits are referencing, and they put in italics here, without selfish ulterior motives, well, what are selfish ulterior motives? What if someone does a personal sacrifice for selfish ulterior motives? Well, that is most likely, or most definitely, displeasing to God. So which ulterior motives are they speaking of? Well, perhaps we could say ulterior motives just to perhaps seem like they are better than they really are. And this is not an opportunity that for us to judge others and say, well, this or that person or my neighbor is doing this or that just to show off. In actuality, we don't know the true motives in the hearts and minds of people. But we should just use this as a moral compass for ourselves first and not to judge others. And in the book After the Storm, chapter 22, a book that is psychographed by Divaldo Franco by the spirit Joanna de Angelis, Joanna brings us this idea of spiritual fantasies, and you may be asking, well, how is this related to the topic? Quite related. This idea of simplicity and personal sacrifice. Let us quote her. She states, a basic characteristic in Jesus' doctrine is the absence of fantasies or fear. Built upon love, its structure is simple and its message deep. It is a doctrine without any outward showmanship. So what does this tell us? It is a set of teachings, of principles that comes from the inside out, that is meant to modify us from the inside out. And even when it seeks to, what some may refer to as reprimanding or condemning others, it doesn't actually condemn anyone within the teachings. And Joanna brings this idea to us when she says, it comforts the unhappy and prepares them for their daily struggle in the journey of evolution. And here's where she talks about condemning others. In actuality, they don't condemn others. And we quote, it addresses the fallen, lifts them, and helps them proceed with courage. It assists the irresponsible ones, giving them the motivation to return to their senses and overcome their passions. All of the Gospel's lessons are comprised of simple images with a great ability to communicate their message. Whenever it condemns, it aims at selfishness to reform the selfish. When it raises its voice, it attacks error, but also helps the victim of deception. So herein lies a sort of compass for each one of us alike. Firstly, to know that these teachings are much more profound than probably we ourselves could even imagine. And secondly, it is not here for us to use as a tool to stone, so to speak, one another, to judge one another, but to lift one another up. Oftentimes, the world of transition that we're living in, each one of us in our own right are experiencing turmoil or anguish or pain on all different varieties and levels. And we should utilize these opportunities to help one another, to guide one another in a loving way that Christ left this divine legacy for us. And lastly, we leave you with the closing remarks that oftentimes in life, we are much like the Good Samaritan, or sometimes we are like the man that is beaten and we're down, waiting for someone to come and help us. Other times we are the priest or the rabbi or the rich man who come and just offer but so little. Or sometimes we are like the thief that steal. But no matter what, at every moment in our lives, we are given the opportunity to redeem ourselves. Life is a series of choices we make. We know that in the Gospel according to Spiritism, it teaches us about divine will, but also free will. So let us utilize our free will to do as much good as we can, to work on our own inner reform, and taking a second look at our personal sacrifices for the betterment of ourselves and for those around us. And as always, we wish you a very happy 2013 and many blessings.
Welcome to our Yes, Youth Education in Spiritism with Kardec Radio. I am Bernadette Liao, and I'll be spending a few minutes with you, inspiring to bring spiritual awareness and spiritist teachings to our youth, parents, and educators. Today, we will talk about joy, and we will answer the following question. Despite everything I do for my child's happiness, why isn't he always happy? Parents who truly love their children want them to be happy, and they will do their best in order this to happen. But even though parents wish their children's happiness and provide what they need to have a happy life, they notice that this is not always possible. Children live in a dichotomy of happiness and sadness, which is something that we can all relate, as we may recall happy and sad moments in our lives. We all want and pursue happiness on earth because we have experienced that wonderful feeling inside of when we are happy, or the unpleasant feelings of when we are sad. Actually, sadness plays a great role in our lives, so we will value happiness. Carl Jung said, "Even a happy life cannot be without a measure of darkness," and the word happiness would lose its meaning if it were not balanced by sadness. Sadness and hardships help us to become more compassionate, patient, and also purify our souls. So, why is happiness momentary? Chapter 3 of the Gospel According to Spiritism by Allan Kardec explains why we live in a world that has still so much pain and sadness. But happiness is also temporary because we rely on something outside of us in order to make us happy. For instance, we are happy when we get a job, when we graduate, when we have a new car, when we have money, or when our spouse or friends do what we want. Some people are so happy when their material wishes come true that they put all their love and energy into them. But then, when they lose the material things they once had, they become unhappy, struggling to accept their new condition and even harming themselves. Children also put their happiness in what they accomplish, relationships, and in what they have. A typical example of it is during Christmas or birthdays. They really want something and keep asking their parents to give their dream gift. And once they get it, they are very excited and happy. But after playing with it for a few days or even hours, they lose their interest in it. That temporary happiness is gone, and that gift no longer fulfills their needs. So, children, wanting again their happy rush feeling, desire now new things, believing that a new toy, a new electronic gadget, or new clothes will bring the happiness once felt, hoping that the happy feeling would last longer this time. Dear friends, the problem is that we are putting too much emphasis on happiness, where the real focus should be on joy. Joy is not temporary because it does not depend on something outside of us to happen to make us happy. There is a different force in happiness and in joy. In happiness, the movement goes from outside in, focusing on ourselves and our ego. But in joy, the movement is from inside out, a joyful energy that starts within and that we share with the world. Joy is selfless. Joy is a condition of the spirit and mind, while happiness is of the physical body and the material world. Therefore, happiness is temporary, and it will vanish, just like our body will once die. Joy is contagious. Have you watched a video of a child or a baby laughing, and we cannot help ourselves but burst into laughter? Or when someone around us starts laughing with such joy, we suddenly begin to laugh too, right? Little children and toddlers are wonderful examples of joy. They are God's reminders to us to be joyful, despite of all the challenges we may have in life. Joy has to do with faith, knowing that no matter what happens, God is in charge, and we should look at the positive events of our lives instead of the negative ones. Paul the Apostle, in his letter to the Romans 15:13, wrote, I pray that God, the source of hope, will fill you completely with joy and peace because you trust in Him. In these words, Paul calls our attention that joy and peace are connected to our trust in the Creator. Being joyful does not mean that we will become insensitive to what happens around us or sad events, or to be constantly laughing. But being joyful is having the certainty that there is a divine order in everything. We have seen Allan Kardec's pictures as a serious man, but in his heart he was a joyful person. And the same with Jesus and many other enlightened spirits that reincarnated on earth to share their wisdom and joy with us. Kardec radio listeners, joy makes us closer to the Creator. Little children have a natural joy, smiling, laughing, and playing, but we, somehow, forgot that we used to be just like the joyful little child. So, what happened? What is stopping us from being a joyful child of God and being an example of joy to our children? And the answer is nothing. Nothing is stopping us from being joyful. And all we need is the will. Work on ourselves, bringing joy into this world every day as we wake up, thanking our blessings, and mostly trust our divine Creator. Thanks for listening to Yes. And if you have any questions that would like us to answer in this segment, please email them to Kardec at kardecradio.com.
Depends on what our own steps choose. So many miles that we'll have to go through. Things to learn every day. It's the right time, gotta be now. There's no other way. After stumbling and falling, it's time we got back on our feet. After so many beginnings, we can't stand another defeat. Follow the straight road to peace. Get everything it can give. Happiness, hope, understanding, and truth is the kingdom of love among us. Happiness, hope, understanding, and truth is the kingdom of love among us. Roads may be bad, they may also be good. It all depends on what our own steps choose. So many miles that we'll have to go through. Things to learn every day. It's the right time, gotta be now. There's no other way. After stumbling and falling, it's time we got back on our feet. After so many beginnings, we can't stand another defeat. Follow the straight road to peace and get everything it can give. Happiness, hope, understanding, and truth is the kingdom of love among us. Happiness, hope, understanding, and truth is the kingdom of love among us. Among us.
Dear listener, this was James Marotta in his song Road to Peace. A beautiful way to start the new year, thinking about happiness and peace. After all, as the Spirits say by Allan Kardec in the Spirits book, answer to question 614. All we need to be happy is to fulfill God's laws, but we need to know what they are. And Spiritism and science and a beautiful collaboration are bringing us there. By the way, to get to know more about the ins and outs of life, next week here at Kardec Radio, we're going to dedicate the program to a most important topic. We have been talking about obsession, spirit attachment, in so many forms at Kardec Radio. Now we bring to you another insight regarding the spiritist therapy for discarnate spirits. Can you believe it? Can you believe there is what we call spirit counselor or spirit psychotherapy? We are going to discuss this very important topic with our dear friend Adriano Barbo, who is the president of the Mount Vernon Spiritist Center in New York. And the whole discussion is based on several books, but mostly the book by Nilson de Souza Pereira, Getting to the Light, Spiritist Therapy for Discarnate Spirits. Nilson de Souza Pereira is one of these unique people in the Spiritist movement who has dedicated his whole life to being a spirit counselor. And you get to know more about it because, you know, we can help humanity live a much better life by using this practice of this obsession and by engaging not only being a medium, but learning how to be a person who talks to the discarnate spirits, calm them down. Well, you can get to know more about it next week here at Kardec Radio. By the way, if you are in Sacramento on Saturday, January the 12th, from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., the Spiritist Seminar of Sacramento, organized by the Brazilian Spiritual Healing Group and the United States Spiritist Council. Get to know more about it. Register at spiritist.us. And you know, we were just talking about happiness. Dr. Lyubomirsky clearly stated that science tells us that we're more resilient than we could ever imagine. Expressing gratitude is so essential, and we should stop waiting for happiness. And social support is truly powerful. Dear listener, when we talk about happiness, Emmanuel concludes in a most beautiful way. In his message, Evolution in Happiness, in the book, Safe Julus. It's not in English yet, but soon will. We're sure about it. He says in the very end of that message, attend to evolution, to perfect life, but cultivate faith and patience, humility and comprehension that balm the spirit, because there is no happiness without love, and there is no love without responsibility out of God's laws. This is Emmanuel through Chico Xavier. Dear listener, are you feeling the joy? Because we are feeling that too, and we would like to share with you a beautiful prayer to wrap it up and invite you for a prayer as well. Join us in a prayer. Join us as we pray in the most beautiful insight by Allan Kardec in the Gospel According to Spiritism, chapter 28, a collection of Spiritist prayers. By the way, this part of the Gospel According to Spiritism is truly comforting as well, because sometimes we feel so distressed, we cannot even reason enough to put thoughts together and pray. And that's why these prayers are here, to help us. And sometimes we forget to pray when we are grateful, but we should. Kardec says in item 28 of chapter 28, Thanksgiving for a favor received. One must only consider matters of great importance as happy events. Those least in appearance are often the ones that have the most influence in our destiny. People easily forget the good and remember especially what afflicts them. If we would recall every day the benefits we have received without having asked for them, we would often be surprised at the number that have slipped our memory and will be humbled by our ingratitude. Each night as we lift our soul to God, we should remember the favors granted during the day and give thanks to them. Moreover, it is especially at the moment when we feel the effects of God's goodness and protection that we should, in a spontaneous gesture, render thanks. In this case, it is sufficient to elevate a thought, attributing the benefit to God without having to disrupt our work. God's benefits do not consist only in material things. We should also give thanks for the good ideas and the happy inspirations that are suggested to us. While the proud attribute the merit to themselves and disbelievers attribute them to chance, those who have faith render thanks to God and the good spirits. For this, long sentences are not necessary. Thank you, my God, for the good thought you have inspired me with. Says more than a lot of words. The spontaneous impulse that makes us attribute to God the good that comes to us bears witness to a habit of acknowledgement and humility that attracts the sympathy of good spirits. Dear listener, let us join our hearts and pray. With Kardec, when he says, Infinitely good God, may your name be blessed for the benefits you have bestowed on me. I would be unworthy of them if I attributed them to chance or my own merit. Good spirits who have carried out God's will, and especially you, my guardian angel, I give you thanks. Keep me from the thought of being proud for what I have received, or of using it for something that is not good. We thank you particularly today, dear Lord, for this beautiful program that inspires us, for the help of the science of Dr. Sonja Lyubomirsky, bringing us the good news that there are so many ways of achieving happiness, and that is found in expressing gratitude, in appreciating life, and also in cherishing life with our social network. Thank you for all the friends at Kardec Radio who have put together their beautiful segments, inspiring us from all different angles, through songs, through explanations, through quoting from the amazing books by all the good spirits, so we can live and lead a happier life. May everyone who now listens to this very prayer, whether live or on demand, feel your loving touch, your kind caress, lifting us up so we can march forward. Always. Dear God, thank you so much. May these blessings envelop our humanity on the earth today and always. And so be it. Dear listener, we have a lot to share with you, but right now, if you go to KardecRadio.com, you're going to get to know about the beautiful programs we have planned for January 13th. There is a lot to share, and it's all about this journey of happiness. Next week, we will talk to Adriano Barbo about the Spiritist therapy for discarnate spirits. For now, we wish you many happiness, happy thoughts, happy feelings. Thank you, Pam Rogers, for your hi at Kardec Radio chat room, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to Kardec Radio, broadcasting live every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Email us and share your comments at www.kardecradio.com. Until next time, we wish you many blessings.